country over there, and yeah, hope to go back soon. Um, so yeah, my name's Tim Elderton. Um, I started my railway career in 1981 as a volunteer with Lachlan Valley Railway Society on steam locomotives. I got my fireman's ticket pretty early, and then I became a fitter machinist, and I joined the real railway. I became a locomotive fitter at Lithgow Railway Workshops. Um, when I finished my apprenticeship, I um, did mechanical engineering. Um, I left the railways in 1989, 1990. I went to sea, became a chief engineer on ships. So that's my background. Um, I've had Lithgow Railway Workshop since 2010. I kicked it off and built it up to a point where we've generally got about 40 maintenance staff, principally fitters and electricians. 95% of our business is maintaining freight trains that run on the main Western Line. Um, Lithgow is on the Blue Mountains, 2 hours west of Sydney, and it's the main line that goes across to Adelaide and Perth. 5% of our business is doing work for heritage not-for-profit railways and railway museums. So got myself and a couple of other fitters who worked on steam, and I've trained up 2 apprentice carpenters to become car and wagon builders. And last year they overhauled 5 timber carriages for the Zigzag Railway, which is now reopened a few months ago. But back in 2015, 14, I was approached by the the founder owner of the Byron Bay Railroad. Um, he wanted to hire a train, so the guy that owns the railroad also owns a big 5-star resort at North Byron. In fact, the guy's name's Brian Flannery. He used to be a big coal baron. He uh, he actually owned White Industries that owns all the coal mines on, and he rebuilt the Ulan railway line, where a lot of the coal comes out of. But he sold all his interests in coal mining, and he's gone green, and he's built this environmentally sustainable 5-star resort 3 kilometres north of Byron Bay. But the problem he had a lot of complaints from his guests that they couldn't get into the town of Byron Bay because of all the traffic jams, especially on the weekends. That the traffic in Byron Bay is just terrible on the weekends. It's just big, full of tourists. But he had built railway lines before, and running past his resort was a disused railway line. It had been disused for about 12 years. So he made application to the New South Wales government to lease the railway. And those negotiations took a couple of years, and then he spent millions on rebuilding the railway and a long 40-foot trestle bridge over a river. He had built 2 stations. Meanwhile, we had a 2-car diesel railcar set that was in a local museum here. It was mothballed. It took $1 million to restore it. It was in very poor condition. But by 2006, end of 15, we had restored the train, but he wasn't ready for the train because he was still rebuilding his track. And so he allowed us to use the train. So via Lachlan Valley Railway Society, we were using it, running charter trains to local destinations and pub crawls and picnic race events and all that sort of stuff. And then he was having a hard time with the local tree huggers in Byron Bay. A lot of hippies up there and a lot of tree huggers. And there was a big campaign going up there about, we don't want no dirty diesel train up here. And they got pictures of you know, Indian Alco locomotives blowing black smoke everywhere, and as if to say, this is what's going to come to our town, which is rubbish. The train's just got a couple of Cummins diesels of 300 horsepower, and they've got fuel emitters, and you never see any smoke coming out of them. But anyway, Brian rang me one day and said, Tim, look, I've got to do something. Can you convert the train to run on solar power? And I said, well, it's a bit out of left field. And I did a few calculations and I said, yeah, we can. You know, it's only a 3-kilometre run. It's all flat. So I said, yeah, I mean, do that pretty cheaply actually. And in the end, it cost about $1 million to convert the train and install the solar charging infrastructure. So basically, the train, well, is 2-car set, a power car and a trailer car with a driving compartment each end. It's, for those if you're aware, that they're called a 600 or a 620 class 2-car set, and we left one of the Cummins engines and or converters and drive shaft in, and we just took one out and replaced it with electric drivetrain. Basically, it just went into the same engine mount supports, but the assembly had 3/4 of a ton of lithium ion batteries. Memory was 77 kilowatt hours, and next to that was 2 electric traction motors driving to a single gearbox, which then drove the existing tail shaft going down to the final drive on the axles. And we put 6.5 kilowatts of solar panels on the train roof just to give us a little bit more endurance to operate during the day. And the train shed roof has got 30 kilowatts of solar panels. And during summer, we generally don't need to plug the train in at all during the day. It'll run all day, and the train runs 10 round trips a day, so that's 60 kilometres a day. And when we put it back at the end of the day, we generally got about 50 to 60% state of charge left in the batteries. Winter time, we generally do plug it in once or twice a day, and there's about a 25-minute turnaround time at North Byron. The train leaves on the hour every hour, goes down, turns around, comes back, and when we plug the train in, it's topped back up again in about 10-15 minutes. But the train's been running successfully. We commissioned it in December 2017. And in the first year, 2018, we carried 100,000 passengers. It runs 360 days a year. There's generally about 1 week it doesn't run, but track maintenance and other repairs. But yeah, it's I can't believe how well we designed it. And we didn't know at the time that it was the world's first solar powered train. It wasn't until I think about a month after it was commissioned that we found out, and then we started promoting the train on that basis, the world's first solar powered train. And then the following year, we were winning awards with Engineers Australia, like the national and state design awards. Australasian Rail Association we won the Sustainability Award. And we didn't know how efficient the train was going to be. And it hadn't been done before. But once it started operating, we soon discovered that the train only used 23% of the energy that we generate. The other 77% is exported to the grid, and we make money out of that. I keep saying it's the only railway that I know that has fuel as a positive cash flow income rather than a major operating expense. So it's worked out rather well. So that's the history. As I said, we only took out one of the diesel engines. If we wanted to extend the operation, we can take out the other engine. The engine hardly ever gets used. It's just there in case of emergency, because we didn't know how reliable the train was going to be, and it turned out to be extremely reliable. I think it's like 99.5% availability. So there's really no need for it. So we can take out that second engine and put in another electric drive unit and more batteries. There is talk of extending the railway northwards. North of town, there's a proposed there is a proposed subdivision of 400 lots going in, and if that goes in, the railway line goes right past it, and that's about 5 kilometres north of the current terminus. So Brian, the owner of the railway, said that he would fund that. So, you know, I think the developer's probably going to be putting in a development application in the next year or two. So it's a few years away. But yeah, so it's good that the railway could be extended. One interesting thing that happened in its career, I think a couple of years ago, no, maybe 3 years ago now, we had a visit by Michael Portello, and we were in a segment of Great Australian Railway Journeys. So he was a very interesting, funny character. In real life, it's just like he is on the TV show. Top bloke. How we could implement this on other railways? Well, I would have thought by now that we would have had more solar powered trains, or at least battery electric trains running in Australia, recharged by sustainable energy. But it's disappointing in that there was absolutely no interest in this country whatsoever. However, there's been interest overseas. In 2018, I got approached by Indian Railways. They wanted to use this solar train technology to decarbonise their branch lines, where they had diesel rail cars out the branch lines. I did some preliminary design work and was about to hop on a plane to go over there in 2019. And then COVID struck, and then everything got put on hold for 3 years. And then during that 3 years, the Indian government made the decision no, we're just going to electrify all of our branch lines. So they not electrified the entire bloody network. In fact, 95% of the locomotives in India now are electric. They've scrapped the majority of their diesel locos. They've got 5% of their fleet are diesels for standby. They've sent a lot of the old Alcos over to Sri Lanka. Anyway, so India's struck off the list. And then Argentina expressed interest. So that project is still ongoing. So I'm about to enter into an MOU with Argentina Railways. Sorry, the Ministry of Transport of Argentina. So I'll probably go to Argentina in the next few months and do some preliminary design work over there. And that's basically, the second largest city over there used to have a metro rail service, like a suburban train service. But when their railways were privatised a few decades ago, the private operators ran the passenger train service for a while, but it was losing money, and they were just fixated on the freight, which made the money. So it didn't take too long, and all of the passenger trains in Argentina came to a halt. All the stations are still there. They're beautiful old English stations, but the second largest, I can't mention which city it is looking at reintroducing suburban trains, and they want me to go over there and design the retrofits on their diesel rail cars to run them on solar. And the other interested country is Japan. So I was with Japan Rail in October last year and did the design work, and we're just waiting for the grant funding to come through from the Japanese government, and I'll be back to start to finalise the design and commence the installation on converting a diesel rail car over there to solar power operation. And that's on a 30-kilometre branch line. And the Argentina job is also a 30-kilometre branch line as a trial. And if that works, then there's other branch lines that they will start running their commuter train service. So overseas is looking positive, but in Australia, there's no interest at all. And I guess the problem is that, all of the passenger rail over here is generally government funded. There's too many pensioner and children's fares. So the passenger trains don't make money. So even when it gets privatised, there's no bag of cash to spend millions of dollars converting trains from diesel to solar power, and that's the problem we've got. Even with, there's a lot of interest now I'm involved with converting 3,000 horsepower diesel electric locomotives to run on battery, installing about 3 megawatt hours of battery capacity. But it's just millions, like $3 to $5 million, plus the charging infrastructure on top. So until I don't know what we're going to do, I don't know where the money's going to come from. But that's the where we're at the moment over here, anyway. Anyway, that's about my wrap up of the situation. So if you've got any questions, fire away.
Grant here. How are you? All right. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for coming on tonight. It's great to see Australians talking about their battery railways. New Zealand's and they've got the same sort of issues you've got, government mucking around and all that sort of thing. We do have our climate change things, so we are looking at it. It's going to take them a while, but as you say, railways really is the bottom of the list of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
When you talked about $3 million was that per locomotive to convert a 3,000 horsepower loco to a electricity or power?
Yeah, that's right. And the major cost is the batteries. There's cheap lithium ion batteries, but they don't have a long life. And if you start getting below 50 or 40% state of charge, the life of the batteries begin to taper off. There's really good technology batteries like lithium titanium oxide, but they'll last like 20, 25 years. So you can go right down to 1% state of charge. But unfortunately, Toshiba has the patent on them, and they're like 4 times as expensive as lithium ion. But they're the bee's knees. You can recharge them at 4 times, 4C, 4 times their discharge current. So you can recharge them in next to no time. Like whack, they'll take 1,000 amps from a inverted pantograph to recharge. But the cost is just phenomenal.
Yeah, but like anything, over time that will go down, won't it?
I hope so.
Have you done a comparison about electrification versus battery? Like doing a branch line is not really cost effective, I don't think.
No.
Depends on how big your traffic is, but is it comparable, cheaper, do you think?
Oh yeah, it certainly is. We were looking at one branch line here, the South Coast line, south of Sydney. It's electrified all the way down to a lovely little tourist town called Kiama. But the line does go on for an additional 27 kilometres to Nowra. And there's a couple of freight trains a day that goes to a big factory down there, like Manildra Group. And there's passenger rail service that's served by diesel rail cars. And for such a short run like that, converting a couple of diesel rail cars would be like 1/10 of the price of electrifying the line, especially because of all the tunnels. You'd have to lower the tunnels for the overhead and all that.
Interesting. I think the passenger rail cars and stuff are going to be the first options that people are going to look at before diesel locomotives.
The technology's there now. It's easy. You can easily fit batteries to run a 300 horsepower traction motor to replace a diesel engine. But enough batteries, a 3 megawatt hour battery is another matter.
Very interesting. Very interesting. It's a good concept, and I think we'll have to see something more in the future, because they're talking over here 2030. We've got to meet all our limits of what we're going to do with pollution and all that sort of carry on, or global warming or whatever. So I think you might be seeing a bit more opportunities out there.
There is an opportunity over here in Lithgow, even like all the. Well, as I said, we maintain on freight trains that go through here, and the majority of the freight heads west to the ports, and there's from Lithgow, there's 4 kilometres of 1 in 40 leading town to go up to the top of the Blue Mountains, and then it's like 30 kilometres of 1 in 30 and 1 in 60 down to Penrith, down to the suburbs of Western Sydney. So trains that have got 4 3,000 horsepower locos on the front, well, we can take one off and put a 3,000 horsepower battery electric loco on there, because it's only needed really for that first 1 in 40 of 3 kilometres And then the rest of the journey to Sydney is going to be in regen braking, recharging the batteries. And because the trains are empty coming back up the hill, it'll just sit there, do nothing. But again, there's no private rail operator wants to butcher a 3,000 horsepower diesel loco and spend $3 million and converting it to battery electric. And we even looked at putting a pantograph on it, so even on the way back, you can even do a top-up charge. But you're going to recharge the batteries all the way down the Blue Mountains anyway, so there's no need. Anyway, there's all sorts of opportunities, but no one wants to commit.
Yeah, that's the trouble with railways. Everything's big money, isn't it? And to get it really needs to be proven, and you've got to if it's going to be private enterprise, you have to find out somebody that's got a lot of money to do it. We've got a young guy here that's looking at alternative steam locos, and he needs to prove it, but he needs the money to be able to prove it.
Yeah, I saw that on YouTube a year ago. How's he going?
How's he going, Dan? Have you had any updates on what he's doing?
Yeah, so I caught up with Sam about 2-3 months ago, and things were really well. They're set up in a new workshop on the outskirts of Christchurch. Yeah.
Oh.
He's looking at doing industrial sugarcane railways, concentrating on that sort of thing at the moment. As an alternative to diesel locos and stuff like that. But yeah, he needs, if he's going to progress further, he needs some investment from it and finding people that are interested in railways. Fonterra over here has converted a few of their, Fonterra's a big milk factory, milk company over here, and they've converted a couple of their trucks to electricity, to battery, but road seems to get lots more money and thought about more than the railway side.
Yeah,
but it's got to come. Really, really does sometime in the future. I think it's the way to go. The biggest criticism is disposing of batteries at the end of their life. There's a lot of criticism, negativity about that. What's your thoughts on that?
So with the traction batteries that we're using, they say they've got a life of 20 years if we look after them, and they'll degenerate over time to a point where we say, we really need to change them out. And that might be somewhere between year 10 and year 15. But there's still enough life left in those batteries for another 10 years in a different application, as in you use them in the house for solar batteries. In fact, I do that with lead acid locomotive batteries. Those big things that weigh 100 kilos each, 8-volt cells. So, they've got a life of about 7 or 8 years on a locomotive, and then they deteriorate, and when they start failing, they get replaced, and I regenerate them, and powering my house, so they last another 4 or 5 years, and similar things happen with the electric vehicle traction batteries. I'll get a second life, powering houses and stuff like that.
It'd be a fairly big motor that's in the rail car. Where did you find that? Something that big?
Not really. No, it's so when I do the design work, I just replace the diesel with the same horsepower motor, and so that the diesel engine, the Cummins engine that we took out, was 300 horsepower, and I replaced it with two 150 horsepower electric motors, AC motors. The brand is Parker electric traction motor. They're quite compact. I went for two for redundancy. So I designed it so that we had two solar panel arrays, two separate battery banks, two separate traction inverters, two separate traction motors driving into a single gearbox. So if something went wrong in one of the drivetrains, the other drivetrain could continue to operate the service with minimal impact on the timetable. And it's only happened once or twice where something went wrong and the train continued to operate on one side only. But the Parker electric motors, they're and like the system we use is 400 volt DC, and the motors are only about 250 millimeter diameter, 250 diameter by about 500 millimeters long. It's a little motor like that, and
I was going to say it's tiny.
a small package like that puts out 150 horsepower and heaps of torque. And I didn't know. I hoped we had all the torque calculations down right. I didn't really know until I drove it out of the shed for the first time. I sat on the throttle and I thought, oh Lord, I hope this works. Released the brakes and cracked her open, and we started to move, and I opened the throttle more and more just to see how much grunt, and the wheels started to spin. I thought, yes, yeah, got the grunt.
So it does have a fast acceleration like an electric car then.
Yeah, if you wanted to, yeah. But the guys know, that the drivers up at Byron Bay, that they can go for a fast takeoff if they want, but all you're going to do is deplete the battery quicker. And like the Byron Bay Railroad is 3 kilometres long. I forgot to mention it was part of an old branch line that was 130 kilometres long. It went to Murwillumbah, and in the last years of its service, the XPT was running up and down there. But the track it runs on, that 3 kilometres is signposted for 60 kilometres per hour. That's what the track's good for. But they generally run the train at between 30 and 40 kilometres per hour. It's less track maintenance, but more importantly, if we go too fast, the guard gets the shits because we get to the other end too quickly before she's snapped all the tickets on the train. So that's the main reason why we just potter along doing 30. And it's a nice scenic route. We go over a nice bridge, and you're going through rainforest. We get there too quickly, we get customer complaints. Oh shit, we're here already. So we just meander along. But I did design that train, the drivetrain, to do 80 kilometres per hour. As I said, I thought it was only going to be doing 60 kilometres an hour, and as it turns out, we only do about between 30 and 40.
Yeah, we have to make the railway longer to get that speed up then, by the sounds of things.
Yeah. If we extend the railway another 5 kilometres, yeah, we'll definitely have to speed. If they want to continue with an hourly service, yeah, well, surely we'll have to start running at 60.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting. Dan's been very good at getting hold of you and passing on some of the stuff that you've said, but it'd be interesting to get some more information out of you so we can send to some of our groups as well as some of our politicians in New Zealand to have a look. We're looking at regional train services at the bloody moment. We've got a Labor government in at the moment, but elections coming up. So we might get a national party in and they don't like railways. So at the moment, we're looking at interregional trains. So it might be a good application there for that sort of thing. So if you can feed Dan a bit of stuff that he can pass around, that'd be really, really good.
Yeah, well, if there's a branch line about 30, 40, 50 kilometres long with a rail service, a few times a day, then this technology would be ideal.
Well, some of the heritage railways, Pleasant Point, they operate a little Model T rail car in the summertime. You know, they don't have to have a steam crew on or anything like that over the school holidays. And that application of, you know, like a lot of people don't really care if it's a petrol, diesel, or electric. Really, at the end of the day, they want a train ride. So, and they're cost effective and easy to use with little rail cars. So, somebody might bite the bullet and come knocking at your door. You never know.
Yeah.
Even those Auckland rail cars that have just been retired.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes.
Which ones got retired?
Reef, do you want to answer that?
The ADLs, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yes. Ex-Perth, Tim.
Ah, right.
When they decided to put suburban trains back into Auckland, they went to Australia and bought all the diesel suburban cars out of Perth because they were converting to electricity. And there was only a stopgap until they electrified the North Island. The Auckland suburban services, which have just about completed. So they've got rid of these cars; have all become surplus. But yeah, there is other cities in New Zealand that's looking at suburban services. Dunedin, where I live, is one of them. You know,
Dunedin. Really?
Yep.
I love Dunedin.
So you've been here.
And I've been there a few times on cruise ships, and my kids love the chocolate factory, and they love the train ride from the wharf through Dunedin and up the gorge.
Torrey Gorge. Yeah, well, bad news on both counts. Cadbury's closed the factory here, so we don't have a chocolate. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So we don't have a chocolate factory anymore. And Dunedin Railways, or the Torrey Gorge Railways, are actually in mothball now. They have been running the last season for some cruise ships, but that was all over COVID and things like that. So,
oh dear,
yeah, it's been hit pretty hard in that respect. So, sorry about that. No chocolate. You have to go to Hobart for that.
Yeah.
I've got a couple questions if it's all right, or if anyone else would like to ask a question first.
I was just going to ask about the other solar, or not solar, but battery conversions that Horizon was doing up in Queensland. Did you see those ones, Tim?
So I believe they're converting a 3,000 horsepower EMD loco. And I think they were going to install 3 megawatt hours of battery in place of the engine, generator, and fuel tank. Exactly how I would do it. But they've started stripping the loco, but they don't expect it to be ready for service till sometime in 2025.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And also, did you see the one in Argentina, the CRRC one that we just started up last month?
No.
Yeah, there was an article in Rail Express about it.
Really?
Yeah. The Chinese have built some battery rail car thing for a tourist line.
Ah. Is that somewhere up in the Andes?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I just saw it come up on the news.
I did quote on that job about 3 years ago. And again, it didn't go anywhere because of COVID. I didn't get over there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. So it runs on solar power?
I don't think it has solar panels on it, but it's electric and it just plugs into a solar station at the end.
Yep. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so we're not the only solar powered train anymore.
The only one on board was solar, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, like I said, it's only 6.5 kilowatts on the train, but when you stopped at the north end in the summer for that 25-minute turnaround time, you can watch the battery meter rising. So it does a lot. It really does extend the endurance.
Yeah, I do know there used to be a tram driver that worked at Byron there, and he used to thrash it because he'd drive it like a tram.
Not really.
Yeah, he did up on on the Gold Coast trams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he'd go down on the weekends and he'd drive it like he normally drives the trams.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. So, what would you say to anyone who's a bit nervous or reluctant to change a heritage vehicle so much?
Well, that same question went through my mind when I did the design for the Byron Bay Train, because the Byron Bay Railway is a heritage not-for-profit. Heritage, so it's a heritage railway. So I had to minimise the impact on the train, and really, underneath you wouldn't tell. It just look. You can't see batteries hanging out anywhere. It's just the only giveaway really is the solar panels on the roof, and to minimise the impact, I used flexible, thin-walled panels. In fact, it was one of the very first applications of that technology, and like I could have put solid panels on and got an extra 25% more energy, but because they're flush, they don't stick out as much, and they're silver, and the train roof is silver, so it's minimal impact. If you look closely, the only other giveaway is the LED headlights. And that's about it.
The train doesn't run all day. Does it just run during the daylight hours?
Yeah, so it generally first run, depending on the season, is 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and it runs hourly. And again, depending on the season, the last run's either 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. And all of the saloon lights inside are all LEDs. So every single light is LED to cut down. And the other thing we had to do was because the diesel engine drove the compressor mechanically, once we took the diesel engine out, we had to put in an electric compressor. So that's another big hotel load we got is the so we've got 2 air compressors. They're 3 horsepower rotary screw compressors, and they're nice and quiet. You can hardly hear them. But yeah, because we don't use air brake, we use regen braking. The air brake is only used when we pull up at the terminus. So we use very minimal air. So one compressor is kept on standby, and the other compressor is the duty compressor for the day. And the compressor will run for 5 minutes, maybe once or twice an hour. But that's the only other parasitic load that we've got on the train, apart from the minimal lighting.
My other question is, given the environmental impact of lithium mining, what consideration have you put into making sure that the lithium you use in the batteries is, as ethically sourced as possible?
No consideration whatsoever. At the time, it was new cutting edge technology, and so we just used what was available. Those sort of considerations are just starting to, come to the forefront in the last few years, and which is why it's questionable sourcing batteries from China. We've been sourcing the batteries that we sourced are from the US. So, but I don't know if those batteries involve child labour or slavery in their manufacture. I'm not sure.
You wouldn't think so in the States, I don't think.
No.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I have one more for Tim.
Hmm?
If you were to do it, if you were to rebuild this today or start the project from fresh today, is there any technology that would be available that would improve what you could do?
The short answer, oh fuck yeah. the technology has gone ahead with leaps and bounds, and that's why, we can do trains now running at 80 kilometres an hour for between 30 and 50 kilometres between recharge, depending on how much battery capacity we can install on the train. The technology I used on this train, like a Parker, is mainly all US based, but the technology that I'm using now in my designs for Japan and Argentina is European based. So it's technology coming out of Netherlands and Germany.
Thank you for that.
And far more efficient. It's just the batteries and the traction motors and the inverters. The technology in the last 6 years is just
Yeah, definitely. You were talking about the south coastline down to Kiama. That would be definitely a good case because it's just an orphan, that line,
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
The 2 diesel rail cars based down there just tick-tocking back and forth, and they've got to go back to Wollongong every now and again for refueling and servicing over a pit. With the battery electric train, you don't have to do anything.
Exactly, and those rail cars are getting a bit long in the tooth.
Yeah, and look, I did. Well, it was about this time last year. The previous state government put out a paper. I think I might have it. Yeah. They put out a draft Central West transport plan, like Central West New South Wales, where I'm situated, and they were calling for comments. So I put in my response, and I put together a 20-page paper about what we've done on Byron Bay and what we can do for Transport New South Wales, in that pretty soon a lot of those old Endeavour and Explorer diesel rail cars are going to become redundant with a new fleet coming in. And I said, we can convert them into battery electric operation with solar recharging stations. There's a train service that runs through Lithgow, 2 round trips a day, called the Bathurst Bullet. It goes to Bathurst. And that would be ideal because Lithgow Station, Bathurst Station, and a couple of others have got huge big roof areas and awnings for solar panels. And when the train's not there, they're just selling power to the grid. I put all these pluses, all this technology, and it's not pipe dream. It's working today, and yet there's no interest whatsoever at all from our state government, even from the new Labor government. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Did you put in for that one in Queensland, the Kuranda train one?
No.
Yeah, they put out a proposal to convert their trains up the Kuranda range to electric locomotives, but apparently they didn't receive any tenders in the end.
Yeah, well, they didn't contact the right person. That's why.
Yeah.
Was that converting a 1720 class diesel?
Yeah, to
Oh.
electric. And the Coranda range, as you know, is very steep one way, and then
Yeah.
it's just got to pull it up the other way.
Yeah.
Mm.
You'll be making a phone call tomorrow, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll just stick with rail cars. I know that's easy. And I wouldn't have thought, I mean, to do something like that, you know, and again, it's probably going to be like a $2 million exercise to convert the locomotive and for the recharge stations. I don't think that they would have spare $2 million. Unless
That's why most railway stuff's got to be government funded. It's the only way you can do it, you know.
Yeah.
We've got to look at the long term stuff. But yeah, it's just getting there. Yeah, both governments on your side of the Tasman and our side to think outside the square.
Well, the government's got to start putting their money where their mouth is. You know, they want to reduce emissions by 2030 and down to zero by 2050. You know, that they're using it as political football, but there's no money allocated to rail. There's a few hundred million going toward road infrastructure, recharging infrastructure, and heavy road vehicles conversions to electric, but zero for rail.
Ditto. Ditto here in New Zealand.
Yeah. Oh well. Any other questions?
What battery chemistry did you use in the end? Was it a lithium ion phosphate?
No, just ordinary lithium ion,
Okay.
which was state of the art back then. The phosphates and all the other new chemistries, you know, they were still in their trial phases back in 2016. So we just stuck with lithium ion, and even then there was a hard slog to convince the rail regulator over here that lithium ion batteries would be safe in a rail application. So the rail regulator over here generally, the investigators and the rule makers are generally ex civil aviation regulators. So they bring all their aircraft know-how with them. And the one thing that sticks in our minds is there was a 747 that crashed because there was a lithium ion fire. There was lithium ion batteries being carried in the cargo hold of a 747 maybe a decade or decade and a half ago. And they found the cause was lithium ion batteries caught fire. And so when we wanted to put lithium ion batteries for the first time onto a train, they started putting up all these red flags. So we had to put in the battery compartment, we had to put in smoke detectors, flame detectors, heat detectors that went off to a central fire alarm system. And the other thing we did to make sure the batteries didn't overheat is we encapsulated the batteries in cooling oil. So there was no chance of the batteries actually igniting. So we had to do all that to keep the regulator happy.
Yeah, and I think when the Boeing 787 came out as well, they had some issues with they used lithium ion batteries on board, and they had some issues because they didn't have the battery management systems correct, and so they were causing some issues.
Yeah, wow.
I think there was some smoking incidents with the smoke started coming out of the back of planes while it was sitting on the tarmac.
Oh shit! I didn't know that. And I heard the other day that the fuel capacity of a 787 is like 89 tons. Every time it takes off and goes somewhere, you know, it's the aircraft industry that's got a long way to go. Not rail. Well, rail does, but nowhere near as far as what the aircraft industry's got to go. 89 tons of fuel. It's incredible.
So you said it took about $1 million to restore and the rail car. Was that including the conversion to electric as well?
No, the restoration of the rail car was $1 million. That was basically a complete overhaul. The including both diesel engines and transmissions, because they were going to use the train initially as a diesel train. When we did the conversion to solar was about $1 million all up. That's for the train and for the solar panels and the recharging station. So, yeah, $1 million for the solar conversion, $1 million for the train restoration.
I remember seeing a document at a rail conference, the Australia New Zealand Rail Engineering Conference, it's probably 10 years ago now, from someone in Tasmania that was talking about a similar sort of thing, battery electric rail cars, and then recharging every time it stops at a station. And he'd done all of the maths and worked it out, and it was, like you said earlier, it was several times cheaper than electrifying the line, and hugely reduced maintenance and fuel costs as well. So
absolutely,
it's interesting to see some of these ideas start to come out now.
Yeah, I don't know what the guys in Hobart are doing, but there's talk of starting a rail service out of Hobart heading north, and that'd be an ideal line rather than using steam or diesel loco, or just converting a couple of diesel rail cars into battery electric with solar recharging at the stations. Yeah, I don't know anyone in Tassie, so I don't know. And again, I'm too busy running my business here. If I am thinking about selling my interests in Lithgow Railway Workshops, and that'll release me to focus on battery electric trains, because now's the time. So, if I wait another year or two, then I'll miss the boat.
It sounds like you're getting a bit of interest from overseas, though, even though you're not getting the interest in Australia.
Yeah, and I'm a mad traveller, and Argentina and South America's always been on my bucket list, but I can go there for work.
They might have chocolate factories.
Yeah, I'll ask that question.
I've got another question. How has it been for the solar infrastructure at the stations and the power company and stuff? Has everything integrated quite well?
Yeah, it just works just like a house with hybrid battery. Yeah, well, we use the power when we want. Otherwise, we just export to the grid. There's technology's straight off the shelf. It's been there for over a decade.
Very interesting. Well, does anyone else have any questions?
Sorry, I'll just add on that point. At the moment, we just, when the sun comes out, the solar panels come alive, and the inverter starts exporting to the grid. And when we want to recharge the train, well, it just goes from the panels straight into the train, or if the battery's down low, or if it's a cloudy day, or if we're recharging at night, then we than we buy back from the grid. But when we set it up initially, it was cost effective to do it that way because we were selling to the grid for like 25 cents per kilowatt hour. But since then, the buyback has been getting less and less and less, to the point now where most residential houses are only getting back about 5 to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. And same with the Byron Bay Railroad. So they're now looking at disconnecting from the grid and having a big battery bank, so we can be completely off the grid. So we'll have excess energy that we can sell to the Elements resort next door, because they're doing the same thing. They're putting solar panels on I think it's about 150 villas in the rainforest between the station and the beach, and they're putting in a big solar system. And any excess, once our batteries have reached 100% at the recharging station, we'll just on-sell our power to the resort rather than being connected to the grid, because the resort and the railway is owned by the same man. And he's just bought a significant interest into a big solar battery company.
Sounds like a man we all need to get to know.
Could make his next electric train cheaper to build then.
This guy's got the Midas touch. He's a devout Christian, and he's been blessed by the Lord. He had an opportunity 5 years ago to buy a big, how much was it? A 500 megawatt power station just south of Newcastle. So it was run down and derelict supposedly, and the government had been trying to sell it, and all of the consultants are saying, oh, no one's going to buy this. Its site's contaminated. It's going to cost $100 million to recontaminate, to regenerate the site, remediate the site. No one's going to want it. And so Brian came along and said, yeah, I'll give you $1 million for it. And the government said, really? Sold. So he bought this power station for $1 million. And he's a mechanical engineer. He done his due diligence. He says, there's nothing wrong with the turbines. The condensers needed retubing and a few other things. So he spent about $5 million fixing up the power station. And he bought the power station for all the tax losses. And all of a sudden, when he was about to put his power station online, the price of power quintupled. And so he was making money from day one. You know, he was just been absolutely blessed. And he just sold that power station 6 months ago. And he made like $500 million profit out of it. He bought it for $1 million and sold it for $500 million. Anyway.
Was it a coal-fired power station?
Yeah, coal-fired.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You Australians like the coal power stations. We've only got one here. Yeah, we've only got one here, haven't we?
So you've got have you got thermal power stations?
Yep, some in the North Island.
Yeah. And hydro down south.
Yeah, and in the North Island as well.
Right.
But yeah, but the last time we built a power station, I was just on the TV the other day, 1993, the last time a dam was built. We're using a lot of wind at the moment, I think. That seems to be the way of the future at the moment.
Yeah. Hmm. Any other questions?
that seems to be about it, Tim. But no, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We'll let you go have some dinner now,
No
because it
worries.
must be just after 6 p.m. at your end.
Yeah, it sure is. And if you feel free, Dan, to share my contact details with the guys. So if they've got questions afterwards, just give me a buzz. No dramas at all.
Happily. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And
My
thank
pleasure.
you to everyone that's come online with us this evening too. And we look forward to seeing everything that comes next with your sort of global adventures with solar.
See how we go. Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Tim. Really appreciate that. It was really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries, guys. All right,
Thank you.
take care.
Thank you, Tim.
See
Okay.
ya.
Cheers. Bye.